If we truly want to understand Jesus' life and moral teachings, we must also understand the economy of the world he lived in. Because in Judea under Roman rule, poverty was not a fate, but a deliberately constructed system. In this video, we will examine together how the economy functioned in Jesus' time, why the people were so poor, and what the social consequences of this system were. The economy of an exploited people empires like Rome did not aim to develop the lands they conquered, but to benefit from them. Judea was an agriculturally based and relatively poor region. Rome systematically exploited the resources of this region. Rome had established a system of exploitation. Conquered cities added wealth to Rome and fed its insatiable system. They existed to extract grain, silver, and labor from the people by force. Taxes, land tax, produce tax, per capita tax, road tolls, and marketplace fees. Religious taxes were collected not on profit, but on existence itself. A bad harvest in agriculture meant famine, and there was no help or understanding from Rome. System-based poverty. This poverty was not natural, it was a predictable result of the economic system. Rome outsourced tax collection to tax farmers. These individuals paid Rome in advance, and then collected taxes from the people for profit. Debts accumulated constantly, and the people were crushed under their weight. There was no way to object. Interest increased every day. When payments could not be made, land was confiscated. Cities taken by war now witnessed agricultural lands being completely taken from the people through systematic debt. This system was like a landlord who demands rent regardless of the tenant's ability to pay. It was designed to benefit the owner, not the tenant. Economic desperation and messianic hope people were not only seeking spiritual consolation, they were looking for ways to survive economically. Promises of debt forgiveness, freedom, and justice were not metaphors. They were concrete expectations that directly affected people's daily lives. The Roman system was like a pressure cooker. Messianic movements were small release valves that reduced the pressure. The temple economy. The temple in Jerusalem was not only a religious structure, it also functioned as a bank, treasury, tax collector, and court. The temple tax was mandatory. Currency exchange and the sale of sacrificial animals were controlled by the temple. This system operated in addition to Roman taxes and further increased the burden on the people. Jesus' challenge. Jesus did not oppose Rome directly with weapons, but he questioned the moral legitimacy of both Rome and the temple. He said that debt was not a moral failure. He emphasized that the poor were not worthless. He offered the idea of an alternative community. Overturning the tables of the money changers was not only a religious act, but an economic challenge. Offering an alternative proposal, presenting the kingdom of God as a challenge to the existing system. Points to consider. Confusing faith with economics. The issue was not the rejection of faith itself, but the rejection of the economic inequalities imposed by the temple. Missing Jesus' strategy. Jesus did not directly attack Rome. His focus was on weakening the moral authority of the system, especially that of the temple. Be prepared to recognize the importance of economic terms in Jesus' teachings. These were not merely metaphorical. The core conflict surrounding Jesus was not religious, but an economic and political challenge against Rome's power structures and the exploitative systems in Judea. Understanding this transforms the narrative from a theological dispute into a rebellion rooted in economic injustice. Core concept: economic ruin as rebellion. The Roman system in Judea tolerated many things, including religion and criticism, as long as they did not challenge its economic control and the stability that control provided. Exploitation, the process of extracting wealth from the people that replaced justice, was the real issue. Narratives that questioned the necessity of suffering and indebtedness were seen as especially dangerous. The factors creating Roman oppression were taxes, land loss, debt, religious obligations, and political pressure. Judea was virtually a pressure cooker. What Jesus opposed was a direct attack on the system that benefited from this. Crowds plus grievances equals rebellion. Understanding the connection between economic hardship and potential rebellion was vital for Roman rule. Rome's response: Rome prioritized stability above all else. Conflict meant increased control. As seen in the destruction of the temple and the priestly hierarchy, priority was given to preserving the system. Jesus was opening the path toward economy and rebellion. Jesus' actions and messages were increasing the pressure. Jesus challenged Rome not by using force against Roman power, but by undermining the moral justification of Roman rule in economic exploitation. Legitimacy and moral economy. An empire needs more than military control. It needs people who believe in its right to rule. Moral economy is the set of beliefs about justice and legitimacy that make oppression acceptable. For example, the belief that the poor are poor because of their own faults. Rome's moral economy justified taxation and land ownership by associating debt with moral failure. Jesus did not focus on political revolution or economic reform. He challenged the core beliefs that supported Rome's power. By offering forgiveness outside the established system, Jesus implied that debt was not necessarily a sign of moral failure. He prioritized the poor and marginalized and rejected the idea that they were flawed. Early Christians created a parallel society by forming groups based on shared resources, mutual aid, and internal debt relief. These actions undermined Rome's moral authority and made it harder to justify exploitation. Jesus held a faith that openly praised and supported victims. He was like a teacher who exposed the actions of the oppressor as wrong and unjust. Jesus did not lead an army or attempt to overthrow Rome directly. His challenge was not political or military, but cultural and moral. Authority depends not only on force, but on shared belief. Systems collapse when the narratives that justify them are no longer accepted. Economic, political, and social systems endure not through brute force, but because people believe in the stories that legitimize them. When this belief erodes, even powerful systems become vulnerable. Force alone is not enough to maintain authority. A system must be seen as morally legitimate. Collapse through loss of belief. Systems do not fail only because of injustice. They collapse when people stop believing in the narratives that justify them. History does not repeat itself, but it reveals patterns. Do not look for exact repetitions of history. Instead, try to understand the mechanisms underlying the narrative and belief. Conclusion. Jesus' message was not merely a theological debate. It was a moral challenge to Rome's economic and political order. Without understanding this system, it is impossible to understand why Jesus had such a powerful impact.